I'm a bozo. Oh, yeah, I thought you had. You recognize it.
I love you very much.
Many people like to.
All the gas going.
Let's make a toast forever and ever. Let's make a toast forever and ever.
Yes, indeedy. Welcome to the Upful Life Podcast. I'm your host, B. Getz, and this is episode number 36, coming at you live and direct from the Vibe Junkie Studios in Oakland, California. And I've been waiting 2 years to enter the 36th chamber. And here we are. So grateful you're tuning in.
Get it out of control, get it out of control, get it out of control. Everybody here, get it out of control, get it out of control. Everybody here, get it out of control, get it out of control.
Episode 36, or the 36th chamber of the Upful Life Podcast, is brought to you by Proper Canna Naturals. That's propercannanaturals.com. Premium quality, locally and organically grown, solvent-free hemp extract and a CGMP certified manufacturing process. Colorado's finest full-spectrum and THC-free hemp products. It's made with 100% USDA certified organic grown hemp extract, non-psychoactive, that means it does not intoxicate nor inebriate, whole plant industrial hemp solvent free, third-party lab tested for potency, quality, and efficiency. ProperCannanaturals.com. That's ProperCannanaturals.com. Shout out Justin Brothers and the team. Proper Canna Naturals. Topical products, edible tinctures, and even things for the pets. Check them out, ProperCannanaturals.com, Fort Collins, Colorado. Also want to shout out our good friends at Urban Music, The Healing of the Nations, a fresh new online magazine that seeks to explore the storied history between the worlds of sound art, spirituality, and raised vibration. Celebrating the people, the songs, and the stories behind the music, marijuana, and movements. Urbanmusic.com. Herb and Music, The Healing of the Nations. We're going to let it ride out with Murillo's Missy Elliott Flip, and then I will take off on the 36th chamber on the Upful Life Podcast. I want to quickly thank everyone for the reviews on Apple Podcasts and iTunes. Please rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and iTunes because it really goes a long way in sending the algorithms in our direction and bringing new listeners to the Upful Life Podcast. Appreciate everyone who's done so thus far, and I want to encourage anyone else, should they have the time or be so inclined, please rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and iTunes. And you can reach me direct with feedback, recommendations, constructive criticism, or what have you at b.getz@upfullife.com. That's b.getz at upfullife.com. Appreciate hearing from everyone out there.
Keep giving me the sweetest taboo. Keep giving me the sweetest taboo. Too good for me. There's a quiet storm, and I never felt like this before. There's a quiet storm, that is you.
Yes, indeedy. We're back on the Upful Life Podcast, and wanted to just let everyone know that these last few months have been so empowering and inspiring to produce this show and have these conversations and dialogues and narratives, communiques with the Kim Dawsons and Chris Littlefields, Dave from Dopey Podcast, etc. Tough topics, tough times. Look out the window. Babylon is burning. It's just beyond words. And this podcast is not really going to touch on the violence or intense hatred and division. We will, as a matter of fact, on the next episode, we're going to get right into all that. But on this one, we are going to talk to two individuals who have uniquely Black American stories to tell. And we're also going to be celebrating Black Rock City and Burning Man. And the front end of this episode is certainly going to focus on the pilgrimage to the Black Rock Desert in Nevada that we are missing, just like everything else. And we put things into perspective. Burning Man is a very privileged experience. It's certainly very white, and that's something that many people are aiming to change and evolve. And we're going to get into that and keep with our theme of having the discussions about race and just what we're living through as a culture, and also how it pertains to our music and festival diasporas. And that's really what my mission is with this sort of mini-series inside of the Upful Life Podcast. And I didn't want to deviate from the established themes of conversations and dialogues that we've been experiencing and enjoying and have become inspired and enlightened by in recent months, as well as I wanted to put just a little bit of love and focus and inspiration into celebrating the beautiful and often misunderstood and kaleidoscopic wonder that is Burning Man and Black Rock City. So we're going to touch on that with our first guest, who I will introduce momentarily after this Sade drum and bass John wraps up. And we're going to love on Burning Man a little bit and talk about an interesting development movement that's been taking place over the past few years.
You know what's funky? Another Molly remix. You know what's funky, funky, funky. You know what's funky? Another Molly remix.
My first mistake was I wanted too much time. I had to have him morning, noon, and night. I guess I would have known then the things that I know now. I might not have lost the time I complain about. Don't waste your time fighting life.
And episode 36 of the Upful Life Podcast welcomes the Black Burner Project's Erin Douglas. Now, I was going to try to put together my typical introduction, but frankly, I've never met Erin. I don't know her personally, and when I went to check out her credentials and background, I came upon her own words, which does far supreme a job of describing who she is and what she's about with regard to Black Burner Project. So in lieu of my normal, rambling, idiosyncratic introductions with all kinds of personal references. I am instead going to read her bio so y'all can get better acquainted with whom we are about to speak. Erin Douglas of the Black Burner Project is a travel and lifestyle photojournalist and 3-time burner. Now, when the chance to attend Burning Man was presented to her, she didn't hesitate. But that didn't mean she wasn't nervous. The nerves of camping for the first time and possibly being the only person of color she would see out there for a week. Although she met other people of color, Erin saw the desperate need to document other burners of color and share their stories to create a space where the misconception that Burning Man was just for, quote, white hippies, unquote, could be squashed. She wanted a place where people of color could be seen because you definitely couldn't find inspiration on the internet. Erin hoped her images would inspire other people to give Burning Man a shot, give truth to what Burning Man was really about, a platform with a wealth of easy information for people to access, traveling art shows, for the talented artists that go to Burning Man, experiences, and community. You can check out blackburnerproject.com. Something that I was very inspired by some time ago was her open letter, Dear White Burners. You can find that on the website blackburnerproject.com. Dear White Burners, trying to explain what it is like being black in America to the extent where you truly understand is like trying to explain Burning Man to a non-burner, realizing no matter how detailed you get, they'll never get it, but even harder. The difference is, someone can always go to Burning Man, but you can never step into my brown skin for the true experience. In fact, you'd probably never want to. This type of experience you most likely could not handle. And that's from Erin Douglas of the Black Burner Project. She is our guest on the 36th chamber of the Upful Life Podcast. I'm your host, B. Getz, and that was the Marley Marl remix of En Vogue's Hold On.
Hello.
Hi, Erin.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. This is Brian with the Upful Life Podcast.
Hi, Brian. Nice to meet you.
Likewise, I want to thank you for making some time this morning, or morning for me. I know it's busy times, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to speak with you today.
Sure.
Just for our listeners who are maybe less familiar with you or your story, first, where am I speaking to you from, and maybe a little bit about yourself that you're comfortable sharing?
Yeah, so I'm on the East Coast in Maryland right now. I am a travel photographer and travel and lifestyle photographer, and have been to Burning Man for this three years in a row from 2017, and this would have been my 4th year.
Gotcha. Right on. Yeah, I really was interested in the Black Burner Project when I was made aware of it before last year's Burning Man, and really impressed and moved by the work and the conversations and the dialogue and the awareness that you're bringing to light. I wanted to just thank you. You made a post in early June, really kind of floored me. It was in the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd, where you asked sort of rhetorically to the community, what have you done this week to better understand our pain in this system that has held Black people down for so long? Have you pledged to continue this work for the weeks, months, and years going forward? Have you asked yourself why you've been okay with this system for so long, and why? And I have to tell you that that really impacted me in a profound way. I'm not a person of color, but very tuned into, the culture and contributions that Black people have made across the board. And I've really dedicated my own work as a journalist to responding to what you asked specifically. So I just wanted you to know that in addition to this conversation has really propelled me into some areas that are uncomfortable but necessary, and certainly awakening and inspiring. So thank you for, just opening that dialogue. at a time when I know it was so difficult to.
Yeah, and thank you for being receptive and for being open to, listening and hearing and reading and, I guess stepping within to reevaluate some things within yourself. And that's kind of what's needed by everyone, is just the openness to, or willingness to kind of step back and truly listen, and then be willing to not put it on everyone else and to take ownership of like what you can do. What small to big things you can do, and I think a little bit of work, going forward every day, or incorporating that into your life, it will make it grand.
Indeed. And really doing the work in our own lives and the conversations in our families and friendships and our day-to-day, interactions is really what I'm learning the most from. And I also find the most difficult, because those are really intense personal relationships you have with your parents or siblings or whatever. And it puts to test your conviction. And,
Right.
and that's what I've been learning through this. And part of the reason I wanted to speak with you, hear directly from you as in terms of your intention. But maybe we could just touch on a little bit of your background in terms of Burning Man, because I read the interview you did with the Burning Man org, and it was really just kind of struck by the sort of randomness of you arriving on the playa. So as little or as much you want to tell about, how you ended up with that first ticket to Burning Man, and maybe your snap judgments or initial impressions of your virgin year on the playa.
Yeah, so I learned about Burning Man through a really close friend of mine who went for the first time, and I don't remember her. I remember her telling me about it, but I don't remember her really, hankering down and really overly hammering it into my head that I had to go. But she shared enough where I knew it was something special, but I also knew it was different. And so, but nothing really kind of sparked anything in me to take some initiative to go. I knew that she would be going for as long as she would, was able to going forward. And then in 2017, her and her husband gifted me, or fiance at the time, gifted me a ticket and for my birthday, and I said, okay. I don't see myself having, declined it. I know, her gifts are always thoughtful and intentional and have meaning behind it, even if I don't know why she was giving it to me. So I trusted her. She gave me little ability to say no, because, she had a tent for me and a blow-up bed for me and a bike for me, and I just need to get my flight and get my food and things. And even covered my camp dues. So she pretty much left it, it's hard to say no. And so that's why I went. I really don't think I would have put in the initiative to look for a ticket and all that just because she said she really wanted me to go. I might have tried a little, but it might not have been that year. And I don't remember, I know I did a little bit of research, but I probably didn't do enough. I just trusted her and what she told me I needed to do to prepare. I was very aware that it wasn't diverse, so I was a little bit nervous about that, and I wasn't sure about the elements, like the heat and the cold. I hate being cold. So I was nervous just about how I was going to feel. And it was, even though I am a traveler and I travel often solo, it was something about what Burning Man seemed to be that I just wasn't sure about. And it wasn't until I was able to talk to another person of color that kind of gave me some relief. And I recognized those feelings, but they were new. As a solo traveler, I've often been the only person of color or Black woman that I see that my entire trip sometimes. So that wasn't new to me. But I think all the elements of Burning Man, the camping, the desert, the, misconceptions that you don't learn until you get there, were all just part of those nerves. And so it was an overwhelming experience my first year. I really wasn't sure how I felt. I didn't know what I thought really until afterwards. And but it was beautiful and it was unique, and it was just hard for me to really put into words what these emotions or feelings about this different, it was just a different world out there. And so I wasn't sure if I was going to go back, but I knew at least part of me was sure that if I had gone back, I would, do this differently and do that differently. And also some months in, when the idea for the project came about, that was kind of another reason that I said, if all these things come together, I'll go back and do the project.
Right on. That's, it's interesting to hear that you didn't really study or research it in advance, nor did I. And I also trusted some dear friends who, just basically said, this place is for you. And it took me a long time to get there. I was 35 in 2013 when I finally made it to the playa. And I've been going to festivals all over the place, since the late 90s. And I would agree, it is another world, and it really cracks you open. And I was reading your interview where you talked about your first year. You didn't really surrender to the flow. You didn't do a whole lot of solo exploring and more or less trusted in the group. And then I didn't know that you kind of were thinking of the Black Burner project so soon after merely your first year. So you basically set an intention that said, if the stars align and I can make it back to the playa, like, I'm going to do something with this idea. How did you bring that to fruition? Now you're going for another year and you realize, there's a lot more you want to do with it. How did you take it from, your mind's eye actually out there to Black Rock?
It was honestly really different. I give it all to Burning Man to give me the courage. It was something about, this idea and this feeling within that just really wouldn't leave me alone. But I knew that I wanted it to be bigger than just photos I posted on my website and my Instagram. I just really didn't know what. And so I figured I have to submit a proposal if that's the case. And if I get a ticket, those things align, then I'll go. I really didn't have a plan otherwise. And so, going out there and waving down people and telling them what I was doing. And, I was just running around looking for people to take photos of. It wasn't as hard. My first year, it was a lot more people of color that I noticed than my second year than I noticed my first year. And even coming back from that second year, which was the first year of the project, I had no clue what, the images, if I was going to be happy with them. I really didn't know if I was going to do anything. But I had set it up where, if things worked out, meaning the content was good and stuff, that I, was good to be able to share it and post it or use it in ways that were far beyond my personal website. And then, but the idea really just came from recognizing those feelings I had prior to going, recognizing the feeling I had when I finally talked to a person who looked like me, and how easy that was, but then also how hard that was to even find someone. And then after my first year and just posting photos, not necessarily of people of color, but me being the person of color that someone could reach out to and ask questions to, all these people were asking me questions and just telling me that they, hadn't gone to Burning Man simply because they didn't think people looked like them there, or they didn't think we were, welcome there. So it was all the same. So it was kind of just like this feeling of like, I don't even know what I experienced. I just know it was something special, and it's kind of upsetting that people are missing out on it because they don't think that it's a space for them, and there's nothing out there making them feel like it is. And so that first year was just kind of like a trial and error, and, it got received really well. And then, going into the second year, which was 2019 of the project, I went in the same way, went into going to Burning Man the same way when it came to photographing. I knew that I had gotten some support and people knew about it, but I really didn't expect the number of the amount of attention and how much people knew about it, and the I guess how much it meant to people. I wasn't expecting that, so I really didn't have to go and search for people. People came to my camp every day looking for me, and those became my subjects. And so pretty much all the photos are taken in the same spot because I didn't even get a chance to kind of go out and explore and find people as much as the first year. And I continued the idea of the word of mouth kind of marketing when it came to the group photo, and, realized pretty quickly that it was going to be significantly larger. I still wasn't expecting the group photo to be as large as it was the second year, but it was obvious because people were approaching me about it, not knowing who I was, approaching me and telling me I had to go to this group photo on Friday that they had heard about. And, so it was I have no clue how it went from the first year to the second one in terms of how many people it touched, but it was a significant difference in my experience as someone who was curating it all and capturing everything, and someone who created it. It was just such a different different energy that I had to expel and use every day, and it was beautiful. It was a lot and overwhelming, but it was beautiful. So I hope that answered the question.
Oh, and how? Yeah, definitely. Thank you for, the detailed explanation. And, I only know it from Instagram and sort of word of mouth. So it was just interesting to hear how it came to fruition from your idea. And yeah, I can remember in between 2018 and 2019 and the run up to last year, it was just kind of exchanged in a lot of ways. One of the flippant remarks people like to say when they deride Burning Man is it's the whitest shit ever. And it's a true story, and it's an accurate depiction. But I think that there was such just joy and inspiration and excitement behind the fact that people of color were not only coming to the playa, but, celebrating themselves there and announcing that, this is for us and we're inviting our people. It was just really something that white folks like myself could get excited about. Like, we're actually evolving and moving towards a more diverse Burning Man, and maybe some of the brilliant ideas and artwork and connectivity can, extrapolate into other cultural areas that it hasn't affected yet. And I'm really inspired by your ability to plug into the beauty and enormity and the sort of humbling humanity of Burning Man, and then bring it and depict it and portray it with such, pride and honor and grace. And I'm looking at the iconic "Don't Shoot" photo, which, has pretty much gone viral for a while now. Did you realize the sheer power of that image when you took it, or did it take it going viral and sort of becoming the, iconic, depiction of the Black Burner Project for you to realize that you had really grabbed some magic?
Well, I don't know if I realized it completely in the moment, but I knew that, I had just literally arrived to the playa that night. It was on my second year, and went straight to Duck Pond that was next door for a party. It was nighttime, and saw him in the vest. And, I had a decision where I could have just admired it and said nothing. I didn't have my camera, so I just told him that I wanted to take a photo of him in the vest, and he told me to write down his address and a time on his jeans, and so I did, and he showed up the next day, and I just thought it was like such a significant piece that he created, especially because he used the symbol of the man.
Yes.
And one that I wouldn't have even thought of, and I don't remember what happened that year, but I'm sure I'm sure there was someone else around that time that we were mourning in terms of their death and trying to get, justice for as well. And so I just thought it was just beautiful that he saw that. And he said it was like a really great, talking piece that people would ask him about, and people had different perspectives, but it always opened up, conversation, a space for conversation around it all. And so, I knew it, but then I also didn't know, because so much has transpired and since then, and we're saying the same things, but it's just so, it's like such an emblem of what we've been talking about. And so I think especially this year, when people are paying attention a little bit more, it just became bigger.
Indeed. And there's so much depth to the concept of the don't shoot with the man. His, because the arms up, as we know on the burn night, that is the total surrender moment. Where just before he burns, and just the parallels there to the total surrender and what people of color have been living through, is just, it's so deep, and even talking to you about it now gives me chills, and I just wanted to just again say thank you and honor that it's art, it's culture, it is conversation, it is pain. And it's also inspiration, hope, all in this image. And I think it's just a real testament to whatever vision you had, even if it was sort of a random thought that you wanted to do this project, to have it evolve into something that so salient in this moment in time, is just amazing. So I am always interested in just hearing about these type of endeavors, not just with Burning Man, but in the arts community and music communities. So we hear you for sure, and see what you're doing, and in some capacity, whatever's appropriate, whatever feels right. I want to be a part of it. I'm not Black, but I am a burner, and I certainly believe in what we're working towards here. And this brings me to kind of a harder question that I wanted to ask you, which is, were we to have a Burning Man in 2020? Where do you see the Black Burner Project's role now that the conversation is no longer, in the back burner, to say it is in the forefront of all of our lives? I mean, I woke up before we spoke. I've been reading the news about Wisconsin and Jacob Blake. Obviously, there's been a ton of talk about Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. And I mean, I went to a march here in Oakland. I was just looking at this painting of all the faces of all the people of color who have been murdered in recent years, and it was like 40. And I, my heart aches, and I cannot pretend to imagine what it feels like to wake up as a person of color in this country. But I do want to hear, how, in essence, the Black Burner Project may have, what role you would have taken, or what voice you would have used in this moment of time. And is there a role for white folks who want to be allies to be a part of the Black Burner Project moving forward?
I mean, for sure. I think, I think it's significant that everything happened this year, because it's not just about, Burning Man being canceled, but everything that happened prior,
Sure.
that kind of goes along with it, because if everything else happened, but Burning Man was still on, it just wouldn't be the same. And so I think, even me writing that piece wouldn't have happened, obviously, if the murder of George Floyd didn't happen. And so it's a really significant time for the community, this community that's so large and so vast, and so, we are such intellects and creatives in so many different ways. It doesn't mean you're an artist by, sculpture artists. You're just creative people,
Yes.
and we have the ability to, we go out there, we build, and we create something that is completely opposite of the world that we usually exist in, and then we survive in this world too, and figure it out. And we have the ability to really, I believe, to make some major impact. But I think it takes things like these situations that are happening now to kind of awaken people, even if you're in the Burning Man community, to truly understand what's going on, and to not just wait to Burning Man to happen to, kind of leave everything at the gate and come in and not have to worry about things, but to take that whole world we create and bring it out here, and to how do you do that better in the default world. And I think doing that better is understanding what your community, all people in your community, have to go through on a day-to-day, and how you can support that. And if that means you recognizing that you haven't been an ally, and you haven't been supportive, and you haven't been empathetic and understanding of what, Black and brown people go through, that means, taking on the work. And I think if you can take on the immense work and challenges that Burning Man, that you face when going to Burning Man, then you can do it. You can do it in regular life. And so I hope that, the project, has and will continue to kind of be that space that makes people aware of the stories of Black and brown and BIPOC people, and challenges the community to start doing better, the community and including the organization. And hopefully the organization will recognize the work, and knowing that it needs to do better in terms of who's in leadership, who's and that they're supporting the community. And so, I'm still trying to figure out, where to take the project, because it's evolved, a lot since, the idea of it in the first year, and especially over the past few months.
Yeah.
And so I definitely want to make sure I'm doing it right, and I'm being, if I'm going to be somewhat of a voice, that I'm doing things clearly and making sure I'm making the right impact. And speaking up for the people who are in the community to make sure that they're feeling a difference, and that we're holding fire to the organization to put action behind words. And I think they're slowly doing that. But I think it took us speaking out for them to really, really understand, that they needed to do better. So I hope to continue to do that, and to be able to create more than just a group photo out there, and to bring more awareness to our culture and to people, and to just make it a space where people feel comfortable to reach out to us and to anyone, and to collaborate to make sure that we're all doing what we need to do to be welcoming. It's one thing to say Burning Man is a welcoming space as someone who's not a person of color, just because you feel it, versus truly understanding what someone is feeling on the outside looking in when they're not a person of color. That's it right there. Yeah.
In terms of, I didn't mean to jump in on you, but that is, you nailed it with the, it's different, and we can't, radically inclusive doesn't mean the same thing to everybody.
Right. And it's I get it, because it's so different, and you're speaking from your heart because you know how you are out there. So it's easy to just say it's for everyone. It is welcoming. And I'm like, yes, but why is it that so many people aren't coming because of one specific thing? So the idea is to listen and to recognize the feelings, and it doesn't mean that it's not welcoming in a different way than what we normally feel, but you have to get them there, and you have to do things that are going to encourage a more diverse demographic to get out there and create access. And it's a lot of work, but it's very simple too. So I'm hoping that things just like the stories and awareness and other creative projects that I have ideas for will really make a difference in driving diversity there, and challenging the community who are not people of color to do work too every day.
Yeah, every day, exactly. And I appreciate you pointing it out and saying that. And I do have a couple questions left, but I know we only have a couple minutes, so I'm just going to finish with this one. You had mentioned about the stories of, helping people tell their stories. Were you actually doing that in real time on your, Stories from the Dust Instagram series? The Black Burner Project had really been, your voice, your images, and beautiful and salient and certainly inspirational and educational, but you've given other persons of color the opportunity and the microphone, if you will, to tell their stories from the dust, which I've, caught up on a couple and will continue to view them. Just curious how that came about. And to finish up our conversation, what have you learned from the experiences of other persons of color through your Stories from the Dust series, or just your project in general?
Well, I mean, I initially would just, everyone who I took a photo of, I would contact after and interview them so that I could have some context to the person and the photo that I could share. And I've had a few, photo exhibits, and I usually also blow up some of their quotes, which always just gives new perspectives to people who are looking at it. So I always love to people are just, I just love to know the story behind the person I'm taking a photo of. And then when it came to COVID, I just was, thinking of something different to do, and decided to start doing IG Lives. And I'm not, usually in front of the camera, so it was a challenge for me to convince myself. But, I thought it's another step to hopefully, sharing more stories, changing the perspectives of people who haven't been, and, being able to talk to more people outside of who I have taken photographs to just open the door to more information. And I think a lot of apprehension has to do with, one, awareness, but also just being misinformed. Like the internet, even with the white hippies or the white people in the Black and platforms are still not really horrible depictions of what Burning Man is. And so what Burning Man is on the internet is so far from
Yes.
what we are experiencing. And then on top of that, there's no, Black stories being told anywhere. Black or other people of color. So, I just decided to reach out to people and see if they'd be open to doing IG Lives, and decided to make that a weekly thing. And it's been great. I love talking to people about their experience. It always usually could last longer than an hour. Everyone has something different to say. And it's truly, based off of the messages and the comments, it's truly been, eye-opening to people when it comes to, one, gathering just basic information about surviving and preparing, but just understanding the different reasons people go, recognizing that each person has their own, personality and into different things. So it's not for one type of person. which is a big misconception that, it's so much more than, sex and drugs. That's barely what anybody talks about, and that there's real depth to the experiences that people are having. And so I think it just makes people more curious. So it just reinforms the power of like storytelling and, the power of, listening to your inner, your inner self when it comes to an idea. And it's something that I believe, really strongly in. And so even when it becomes really hard, I'm realizing how much time I'm putting into it, I know that like this project means a lot to me. And I've always wanted to inspire and encourage people through my work to do things like travel, which has always been important to me. And it just happens to be that this is niched down to something specific like Burning Man. So I think that's what I've learned is, the fact that, I could have steered clear of this idea because it was scary and not done it. But I also think that experiencing Burning Man gave me the courage to do so when you see such amazing things being built before, it just gives you a different bolt of confidence of what's possible. And then I just saw the need to see myself and others to see themselves. So I think that's it. Like the power of storytelling, the power of listening to, these ideas, even if you don't know what to do, or how it's going to be done, and like trusting yourself. And, and I hope to, continue to do them. I think they've been helpful to me and to, for me, they've been helpful because I have fun just exploring Burning Man through someone else's, experience. And then I know it's nostalgic for the person who's telling the story. And then it's eye-opening to people who are listening to it. So it's been, I've been enjoying it.
And so have we. And thank you for finding the strength and the power to step into this role and place, because I mean the exponential effects of the work you're doing are continuing to happen on a daily basis. And I can attest to the idea that Burning Man gave me the strength and confidence to step into certain areas of my work and personal life. And I think that the fact that you're communicating that to a segment of the culture and population that might not otherwise be exposed to it is like just incredible work. And it's really evidenced in the stories that your guests tell, because no two are alike, and everybody's experience is very real and very human. And people are not afraid to bear their emotions and their fears and their apprehensions to you, and then how they've worked through that or overcome them through, on the play and off the play. It's just really profound. And I think that's a great place for us to wrap it up. I hope that you've enjoyed our dialogue as much as I have. It's an honor and a privilege to speak with you, Erin. We'll plug the site and the Instagram and all that on the podcast, and hopefully we can check in with one another down the road and continue the work.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, and thank you so much for your support. And I'm sure we'll be in touch for sure.
I look forward to it. Well, you have a good burn week, whatever you choose to do with it, and we'll see you on the other side.
I'll actually have a gallery in I believe it's one of the platforms. I'll have a gallery. I'll share that information with you, so you should go check it out.
Yeah, please do. We'll embed it on the homepage for the podcast, and I'll even put it on my own socials. So yeah, let us know.
Sure. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Erin. Bye-bye.
Where do you go when you lose your mind? Where do you go when you close your eyes? Where do you go when you lose your mind? Where do you go when you close your eyes?
closer through time, coming together. Ours are minds, ours are minds.
And we're back. Upful Life Podcast wants to offer a deep bow of gratitude and large up to Ms. Erin Douglas of the Black Burner Project. Fascinating, thought-provoking conversation with the travel photographer and three-time burner. You can check her out on Instagram, Black Burner Project, also the Black Burner Project website, and of course she has a great interview, print interview with burningman.org, so you can Google that as well. And we look forward to hearing more from Ms. Douglas and her Black Burner Project. And on a somber note, I wanted to just say a prayer and be heard for Mr. James Orak, great thinker, trusted, valued, beloved member of several Burning Man camps and communities, as well as Festival Nation, if you will, or planet for that matter. Just a beloved writer, thinker, hardcore search team that's been mobilized and doing good work, but he's yet to be turned up. The authorities, officials in the area are calling off their part of the search, but his friends and family, headed up by our dear friend AJ, they're still looking for him. So sending love to James Orak, the Kiwi, wherever you are, my brother. You're loved, and we look forward to finding you. And we're back on the 36th chamber of the Upful Life Podcast, and it is my distinct pleasure to bring to you D.J.WILLIAMS, who is an incendiary guitarist with his own project Shots Fired, and of course has been manning the lead guitar wing with Karl Denson's Tiny Universe, KDTU, for over a decade. And I've known DJ for some time and consider him a friend, and I've been a big fan of his musical contributions across the board for a long time as well. Now, I've interviewed him for Live for Live Music, and we intend to do a proper sit-down in person for a lengthy career-spanning conversation down the road whenever it's safe to do so. But in the meantime, I really wanted to catch up with him for his perspective on current events and the social and racial and cultural climate this summer, 2020. I checked in with him some weeks ago, middle or end of June, in the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd, and the country was literally ablaze and angry and demonstrating in the streets. And that has continued for the most part through this long, hot summer. And now California is on fire in a different way. But people are still angry. They're still marching. Just today, in the aftermath of the Jacob Blake shooting in Wisconsin, the NBA and Major League Baseball teams are boycotting or striking, if you will, because they've had it up to here. And it is with that backdrop and that energy that I am producing this show today, towards the end of August. And DJ's words from mid-June are only more salient, more potent, more applicable today as they were just a few short weeks ago. Now, I really trust DJ to lay it all out there, and he did. He really reached deep into his personal memories and broke down his experience as a Black American from the stage, as a youth, traveling around, falling into the different music scenes in Richmond, Virginia, and then a whole lot of what he's experienced and was just willing to share. And as I mentioned a number of times on this podcast, these are not easy conversations to have, and you know, it makes us all look within ourselves as we listen to some of the people who we've supported and cheered and loved and celebrated on the stage for years, to bear some of their truths and to express how they feel and how they are living through a reality that's entirely different than many of ours. And so with that, I want to offer a deep bow of gratitude to D.J.WILLIAMS for the conversation, as well as Erin Douglas earlier on this episode, Chris Littlefield before him, Kim Dawson before that, and all the listeners who have tuned in and had similar thoughts, feelings, emotions attached to these difficult topics and just raw emotional memories that each of my guests has been willing to share. So as the God MC Rakim once said, times is hard on the boulevard, but it's because of people like DJ Williams and Erin Douglas that we're able to somehow conversate and navigate our way through the darkness and into the light. And it is that energy and spirit with which I make this show. So, that said, let's hear from my man, my friend, and an incredible musician, guitarist, and human being, DJ Williams of Shots Fired and KDTU. And we'll hear DJ's own song, New Ammo, with the Tiny Universe to take us into this conversation on the 36th chamber of the Upful Life Podcast. I'm your host, B. Getz. Yes, indeedy. Talk to him, DJ. DJ, this is B. Getz with the Upful Life Podcast.
What's up, my man? How you feeling?
Man, I'm pretty good. You know, I gotta say I'm blessed, and really sunny day out here in Northern California. I'm happy to be talking to you.
Yeah, man, always great to hear from you, man. I love catching up with you.
Likewise, man, and I gotta say, of course, I've been a fan of yours as an artist and a musician over a decade now. I was kind of doing the math before. And
man, dude, appreciate that.
Yeah, and proud to call you friend for at least more than half that time. And you know, we got a lot of history, and of course, I want to talk about your career, and hopefully in the future we'll sit down in person like we've planned, and really do the whole career thing. But crazy times right now, and I just wanted to reach out to people I know in the music community and just hear some people's stories, their realities, because there's a lot to be learned and gleaned in this moment in history. So thank you for making the time.
Yeah, man, it's a very interesting time that we're living in, so it's always really nice to kind of bounce new ideas off of other people and trying to get other people's input just as we're kind of getting to the term that we've heard a lot, the new normal, you know?
Yeah, that is a term that's bouncing around a lot. There's a lot of new terms, and we'll definitely like touch on just what the hell's happening. But one of the things I'm really stoked about is you just put out some really sweet new music. It's on Color Red.
Yeah.
Let's talk, because I've been a fan of Shots Fired since you started dropping stuff, 3-4 years ago. But you've really found your groove. What is the newest release about? Who's on it?
So the newest release, we recorded it in Denver, and I've gotten to befriend a lot of really great musicians in that scene. That's just constantly been like on the upward draft right now, I guess I could say, in the music world, in the jam world. And it's just like, so this Shots Fired, I originally started in LA. I moved to Denver about 2.5 years ago, and it's been really great to kind of transition the band from California to Colorado. So I've been working with Dan Africano, who plays with Ghostlight. Used to play with John Brown's Body back in the days. Great bass player. Neil Evans, the Forever Neil Evans, not the still alive Neil Evans, did drums for me on a couple tracks. Kawan Turner played drums on it. We've got Joe Tadden from the new Master Sounds, killed it on the organ on this record. Nick Gerlach on sax. Andre Malley on trumpet, and my boy Scott Flynn on trombone from Elephant Wrecking Ball and Odessa.
That's a hell of a lineup. Obviously, you've been like mixing and matching in different cities. I know you've got like the SoCal version that gave birth to this project. You've obviously got your hometown version, Bay Area version, hometown version in Richmond, and of course, the Denver is really the epicenter for so much music in our scene, and you've lived there for a time. I know you're taking some time away, and we'll get to that. But just talk just a little bit about, moving to Denver and sort of becoming immersed in that just pre-COVID. Like, what was the scene, the culture as a musician, and just like living there?
For me, it was a really easy transition because I've been doing shows in Denver for probably a little over a decade, and it was one of those places. Every time we went there for a show, I would be like, man, this would actually be a really dope place to live and kind of like cultivate a new scene here, just kind of jump into the scene that's already been there, because Denver is one of those towns that really, really supports live music. Like, you can have 6 sold out shows, including Red Rocks, with people with multiple tickets to go to each show like in one night, and that's almost unheard of in any other city in the U.S. So it's like, it was really interesting to like see all these people coming in, like some of the lettuce guys. A lot of the lettuce guys live there now. Like, Dice lived down the street from me, and I'd run into Schmeens. I'd run into like Borum. I'd run into Benny Bloom just moved there. And there's kind of this influx of all these great musicians from New York, from Austin, from New Orleans, who are all coming into Denver, it seemed, simultaneously, and it was doing nothing but feeding an already great community and making a better one. And even when we had gigs there, like these other musicians you would see at your shows, there's a really great support community amongst musicians as well, which I really love to see. So it was just really easy to just jump in and kind of pick up from right where I left off of, because I was used to that from growing up in Richmond, Virginia. It was just that kind of same kind of community, so it just felt right.
Did you notice that had any kind of impact moving there and immersing yourself like that on your writing, on your playing? Did you notice like maybe you were more prolific because of your surroundings?
Yeah, I mean that's definitely with anywhere though. Like anywhere where I'm surrounded by like-minded musicians, especially musicians that kind of give you that with open arms mentality, it definitely comes out in the writing, and it also almost makes our job a lot easier.
Yeah, I've just noticed whether, a lot of the cats you mentioned that moved there, and of course Eddie Roberts, who was here in the Bay for a long time,
Yep.
is major in Denver, and everybody together there is just creating, producing such, high art, and you're a big part of that. So I just kind of wanted to take a moment before we get into more serious topics to just give you an opportunity to tell people where can they hear, the D.J.WILLIAMS stuff, the Shots Fired. Where's the best place to get the newest shit?
So right now we're pretty much on all the streaming platforms, and kind of wanted to get away from that model of dropping a record and almost kind of giving everyone too much to eat, because I really wanted each song to be given a right amount of attention that I thought it deserved. So we had this idea of putting out one track a month until the record comes out. So that's why I call this record The Samurai, The Cowboy, The Seductress, The Villain. So I wrote these songs towards these characters, and each song is supposed to kind of paint a picture of who these characters are. So last month we put out The Samurai, and the Samurai song was called Iron Fist, and it was kind of like this kind of fight movie, kind of soundtracky. The whole thing's kind of a cinematic vibe. And the one that we put out this month, Sucked on Trails, is the track for The Cowboy. And then next month we're going to put out the track for The Seductress. And then in August we're going to put out the track for The Villain and also release the rest of the record on Color Red.
Word. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I love that idea of the rollout. I really love the imagery that came like Mike Tallman stuff for that first Iron Fist track was
He crushed it.
really money, and your thing and Color Red's a nice fit. So I'm stoked that's happening, and we'll definitely be sure to play some of that music on this podcast.
Awesome.
and let folks, and I'll try to get some on Live for Live Music. I know they've been real supportive already. So
For sure.
we definitely want to, make sure that people get an opportunity to hear the music, because, the music comes from the struggle, whether it's
For sure.
relative to what's happening right now or your whole life, or any artist's life. And I talked about that with Mike's wife in an interview earlier, with just how in the music is the struggle, and having lived it, there's just a tangible sort of factor or quotient, I should say intangible quotient that's just in there. And a lot of people of color, are in essence like being scrubbed from the music and from the culture, and therefore like we get watered down versions of music that Black people have basically invented. And
For sure.
I'm trying to get people of color in my network on the show, and just in general to give them an opportunity, not to lecture anyone, but to just talk about their Black American experience, how it comes out in their music, and how can we learn. Because, Jam Cruise, Jazz Fest, a lot of the stuff we do, is mostly white audiences. And a lot of times it's white folks on stage, but it's almost always music rooted in Black culture.
Black music is American history.
So
Black culture is American history.
Absolutely, man. And this has been a reckoning for a lot of people, and this isn't a conversation that's easy to have. So I want to say before we get into it that I appreciate you being willing to take it there. And I'm learning. Man, I'm not in a place where I could say I'm free of inherent biases or anything like that. So I'm doing this as much for myself and for my own process as for other people to hear just your story, and then like how we can be allies, and just by understanding and listening and talking about it. So you mentioned you're back in Richmond, and
I am.
How did you end up back in Virginia? I understand it was relative to the music industry shutdown, right?
So in the beginning of everything kind of shutting down, it was like mid-March. I was still in downtown Denver, and I had a place there, and I pretty much was just living off savings, and I got denied the regular unemployment. I got a couple grant checks, and I got some funding from some artist grants from the state of Colorado, which I didn't even know existed, but I thought was beautiful when I did my research and found out about it. But other than that, it was just, I was living out of my means and really needed to make a hard choice of giving up my place and coming back to my hometown of Richmond, where the cost of living is pretty much half of what it is to be in Colorado. and I decided to just go ahead and do it because, like, Denver's not going anywhere, and I can always go back. My stuff is still there, and I'm lucky that I was actually able to have this decision or this chance to come back to my hometown, and it's always open arms here for me. So it was an easy decision to make.
And you have an amazing music community back there in RVA that's going to just, when it's time.
Yep, and an amazing lady as well, too.
Yeah, that too, and that's a big part of it. Partnership is huge in these times.
Yeah, it was pretty much a straight shot. We made 2 stops. Stopped in Kansas City, and I stopped in Charleston, West Virginia, and then just pretty much trucked it 1,500 miles in like 2.5 days.
Right on. Well, I'm glad that you're back there in the bosom of people that love you, with a good woman and good friends, and your family, of course. Man. Talk to the folks a little bit about what was it like growing up in, obviously Virginia has a very troubling history with racism and Confederacy.
Oh, for sure, man. I got here in 1988. I was like 7 years old when I moved to Virginia. But I'm going to back up a little bit more because my entry coming back into the States as a Black American was a lot different than some of my peers were, because I was born in Jersey and then immediately moved to Monrovia, Liberia, where my mother is from, and my father is from Sierra Leone, which is a town called Freetown in Sierra Leone, and they're both bordering countries on the west coast of Africa. And my father was in the diamond business, so he traveled a lot, and I was actually afforded the pleasure of being able to travel out of the world because of his job. So when I was a baby, until I was like 4 or 5, we were living in Africa, and then I moved to London, and my older sister was born in Germany, so I actually did a stint in Hamburg, Germany for a while. But my mother wanted us to start school in London, so I started school in London up until about the 2nd or 3rd grade, and then we decided to come back to the States, and that's when my parents decided on Virginia. I don't know why, but there's a conversation there that I wasn't privy to, but that's where they decided. And it was a really rough transition because in my mind as a 7-year-old, it was like, oh, we're going to this place where I just think, well, the cowboy movies are from, and like we're going to the deep South, and why the hell are we going here? But never really questioned it because my parents were generally smart, educated people, so you kind of just trust their knowledge. So I got here, and I immediately realized that I didn't have the same background as a lot of other Black Americans did. So I ended up having to learn to put on different masks. And that's because it's almost like I was too educated for the white kids, but I was also not Black enough for the Black kids. So it was always this like juggling game of where do I fit in this place, Virginia, as this kid who's been probably more exposed to a lot of the world than like a lot of my peers have. So I kind of approached it in this way of wearing different masks, and I still do it to this day, like depending on what situation I'm in. And I have a funny story. Like I remember, like my first day of school, we had to get up in front of the class and talk about what we did over the summer. And I was like, got up and I was like, oh, we went on safari and like we did this thing, and I was in London and I saw this like beer garden in Germany. It was awesome. And the teacher just kind of like nodded her head, and the teacher called my mother that evening and told my mom that I had a very wild imagination and that those things probably didn't happen. And I'm sure my mother has an honest explanation of why I think I did all these things. And so I remember my mom distinctly calling me into the room and straight up cussed my teacher out, like in front of me, like cussed her out for assuming that this young Black kid could never have those experiences. And pretty much like told her off in front of me. I remember going back to school, and that teacher was so nice to me for the rest of the year. And it kind of really, it's still ingrained in my mind, like how difficult that probably was for my mom to do. But like also, why would this teacher automatically label me as a liar? And this is like, that was my intro to public school in Virginia.
Damn. Wow. And you just like, you arrive and you're this, in essence, like a worldly young man. And this is in the 80s, and I have some like teacher who's probably never left Virginia her whole life, right,
calling me a liar.
Yeah. and like, did you find yourself, were you able to sort of find your groove in the Black community as a kid, or were you?
I've always been a very adaptive person, even as a kid. And I had to learn things really quickly, but eventually I found my way.
And when did you start really like diving into music, and what was some of the music that spoke to you, to your personal experience?
So I started classical piano when I was 4 years old. I have two other sisters, and at 4 years old, in our family, you had to pick an instrument to play. I think pretty much we all did piano. I think maybe my older sister did piano and violin. But I studied classical and then jazz piano for almost 10 years. And then I didn't pick up guitar until later in my life. But music was always kind of something that I took a knack to very quickly and very early. And I remember I got a drum set for like my 12th birthday, and that was a huge part of my life. And it was also kind of like my ticket into social circles, and whether it was elementary school, middle school, high school, it actually gave me something to, I don't know, I guess kind of impress people with, and I kind of could be in different social circles because of this talent that I had, I guess you can say.
Yeah, man, I was always kind of curious because I knew you grew up in Richmond, but I was unaware of how well-traveled and stuff you were before you arrived there. And I noticed like, with regard to like our scene, as I mentioned earlier, it's a really white scene, and because of the trickle down and maybe the lack of culturing the next generation, like not everybody really knows that the roots of a lot of the music that, you know, people see on jam crews and people see, you know, on the festival circuit, whatever, is versions of Black music. So being that you are in our scene and you know, vibrant contributor and artist in the culture, which, you know, I write about and host this show about and such, I'm curious, like, did you immediately sort of gravitate to sort of this improvisational jazz funk jam scene, or was there ever a period of time where you were, you know, hanging out in another scene or making music in a scene that wasn't this one? Because I mean, I would even put D.J.WILLIAMS' project, which is really the first thing I ever heard from you, still into this kind of world I'm talking about. Was there ever a D.J.WILLIAMS that existed in another scene there?
Yeah, man. Like I was a drummer for a hardcore band called DEFCON 1 in high school. And that was my shit back then. Like I loved like Seven Dust, and I loved Tool, and I was like avidly like listening to like Pantera, and it was an interesting time of my life, I guess I could say. Like I remember like we scored that same band. Our high school was doing the play Beowulf, and they let us score the music in this like hardcore band, and it was like so much fun. And then I mean, I was always had like an expansive palette of music that I listened to. I love classical and jazz, of course, but also like a huge hip hop kid. Like I grew up through the era of like Tribe Called Quest and Arrested Development and Digable Planets. Like that shit was like still high on my list. And then friends started introducing me to like Fish, and like in the beginning I didn't quite get it, but they were like, "Oh, we should like check this stuff out." And I kind of saw those early beginnings of Fish when I could hear like traces of like how it was very composed, like a Rachmaninoff tune. I remember hearing like You Enjoy Myself and being like, dude, this is like really intricate music. So I started to like go down that wormhole of like checking out Fish, which connected me to like Mo and like Keller Williams, and like started to hear more of this stuff in the kind of like in the jam band world. And the deeper I dug, then I started to find bands like Medeski, Martin, and Wood, who would take jazz and like, but kind of not have any rules with it. I mean, it was just kind of jazz naturally anyway. They were doing it like in this whole other way, which connected me to Schofield. And I've always been loving to connect the dots when it comes to music and who's inspired by who. And I think that's something that's been lost with a lot of the white jam kids in the scene today. Like we were talking about, they don't really know the connection of this music. And I think it's not just in the jam scene, there's like a lot of younger musicians don't excitedly as I used to kind of connect the dots. Like I remember laying a bunch of records out and reading all the liner notes and seeing like, oh, this is the drummer from this record, and they also jumped on this thing who also produced this record, and like that excited me, and that was kind of think what's lost with not having liner notes on Spotify, like, and iTunes. I always wonder why they never did that, which kind of upsets me because there's all these people who don't get credit, but it's also kind of the fans we have seeing how we're all connected, you know?
Yeah, that's an important part of it. I couldn't agree more with the connectivity, and that helps like educate. And you bring up like Tribe Called Quest and Diggable Planets, Arrested Development. That was really, you know, how I was first really in any way turned on to or educated about the realities of Black Americans and culture. And I even found my way into the jazz world and the funk world through hip hop samples. So it's interesting how music can teach and how it just, in essence, you know, it exposes people like you and me to just other realities that maybe we wouldn't be tuned to otherwise. And that made me like dive all the way into Black culture and music. And it's how I, you know, grow so fond of Karl Denson's Tiny Universe, because in this world, because I grew up seeing the Dead. I love the Dead. They're still my favorite band, and I've seen Fish, you know, a lot. That said, like
you're big Jamiroquai fan too, aren't you?
I love Jamiroquai. Yeah, of course. But it was in 2000 when I saw Karl. I had seen the Grey Boys before that, but I saw the Tiny Universe at Jazz Fest a few times, and you know, I'd already become pretty hardcore into D'Angelo, and it was like in this world of really white bread funk that I loved. This was a really Black band playing Black music unapologetically. Jam enough to satiate like the hippie kids, but it's really, really, really Black music. And then when you stepped into the role with them is how I really got tuned into who you are as a player and a person, and of course a friend. I'm curious because this is a weird one, but what's it like to get up at the Jam Cruises or the High Sierra festivals, you know, these exceedingly white audiences with not necessarily understanding the heritage or the connect the dots that we mentioned, and you get up there and you're performing, you know, like I said, unapologetically Black music. Just take me through that, if you wouldn't mind, because it's got to be a little bit of a disconnect there, and like how you navigate through that, because you never know it from the performance.
Yeah, and in all honesty, there's no disconnect for me at all. Like, I get up and perform music in front of anybody, and I'm there with one purpose, is to do what I do to the best of my ability and to play as the best version of me and convey this emotion to whoever is in front of me. And I'm not going to say that I don't see color. I obviously see color, but that's not what's on my mind at that time at all.
Word.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always kind of wondered that, just because, you know, it was obvious to me that, you know, that.
Yeah.
Just in general.
I would say that I notice it more when I'm not playing. If I'm in the crowd in a sea of white people who are watching something else, I might give it a little bit more thought. But when I'm on stage, it's completely not on my mind at all.
Well, I mean, you wouldn't think so by looking, but I've often asked myself, because I've seen the Tiny Universe so many times in so many of those environments.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm a white guy. It's not like I can make any judgments here. I'm just like every other white person in the audience. I just, you know, I try to have an appreciation. That's why we're talking about this stuff, for where it came from. You know, like, we listened to that Mos Def song from back in the day, Rock and Roll, where he's just letting you know, like, it all comes from Black culture. And I just think you're such an important member of our community, and you contribute so much to different projects and stuff that I wanted to give an opportunity for you to tell, like, your story in that regard, and how it affects you. And it sounds like it really doesn't affect you. Do you have instances?
If anything, it's a beautiful thing to see, like, the power of what we do, bringing people of all walks of life together. It's almost the complete opposite of the craziness that's going on today. And it kind of has been like that even during the civil rights movement in the 60s. Like, you could still go to a jazz club in Harlem or something, and there would be like beatniks on white people and Black people, like, they're in a smoky room, because that's the power of what we do. It brings people together, and for that moment, for that 90 minutes, for that 2-hour show, no one's thinking about the color of anybody's skin. And that's the power. That just shows the power behind what we have and what we have as musicians.
It does, man, and
It's a gift. It's a true gift.
it is a gift, and it's a gift that you're able to exist in essence above the madness or outside of it, and just connect with the performance and the power of the music, and leave, the bullshit behind. But then that makes me want to ask you kind of another hard question. If the fact that our audience is collectively would probably say a statement like, I don't see color, I don't notice, it's music, I just love to groove. In light of everything that's happening now, like with the awakening and people struggling to come to terms with how deeply rooted the racism and everywhere is, should our music scene be a sanctuary away from that, where we can just lose ourselves in the music and not necessarily get dragged down with that dark, evil energy? Or is it incumbent upon us do we got to unpack our fucking suitcases too, because it's reckoning time? Sanctuary or talk about it?
I think it's a place for both, and I think it should come down to the individual. I mean, that's the beauty about being an American, is that we get to choose, right?
Of course.
Yeah, so I think if you're more comfortable just having this space to let go and not want to do anything, by all means do it. But if you want to use this thing as a platform to really try to bring some things out, and by all means do that too. I think it should be broken down to just one or the other, because it's going to be different for everybody on the individual level.
Definitely. It's a conversation you hear on a lot of levels. Like the other day, Kunj made a post about how he's seeing a lot of musicians being told, hey, shut up and sing.
I saw that,
right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of, in essence, if we're just going to say, you know what, fuck the bullshit, let's jam, that's cool. But, to me, that just feels like we've been doing that a long time. I've been doing that a long time. I've been looking the other way. I've been reaping the benefits, building my whole sense of self, from fashion to music to fucking how I think.
People should know that all this music has come from this suffering and all this. If you want to, people always say they don't want their musicians talking politics. It's well, where do you think 90% of this fucking music came from? It's you don't get one without the other. Yeah.
And I think that's an essential part of it, is that people have been getting one without the other for a while now. Yeah. There's been a lack of consciousness, even in hip hop, that's just the conscious side of hip hop, or the learning, understanding, the ghetto CNN, as Chuck D once famously said, has been replaced with just, whatever they're playing now is there's not a lot of messaging there. There's the earth gangs out there, but my point is there's a lot of people asleep at the wheel, and I think that's to be said for our music scene. People love to get fucked up and dance, and that's great and all, but it's just, look outside, it's ugly, and I feel
it is, man. And one of my main things that I've been with the whole Black Lives Matter thing, to me, it's not just Black Lives Matter, but it's also it's about liberation too, man. It's we keep talking about it, but we haven't really been doing anything, and young people haven't really been very proactive. So let's always keep the conversation going. We don't always have to agree, but let's keep the conversation going in a respectful manner always. And I think this is kind of a really great stepping stone in that direction.
How far do we take it? Do you believe that we should say, not buy music equipment from certain brands that, say, contribute to the current administration, or not play certain venues where there's been documented incidences of racism or prejudice?
Yeah, like everyone's been saying, there's many lanes. So you don't have to be in all the lanes. Pick a lane and let's do it, but let's keep moving forward. All those things you said, I'm all for it.
Word. Yeah, I'm just trying to,
if you can
figure out ways.
Part in just one lane, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for some people it's writing a song, and for some people it's talking to their racist uncle. I mean, of course, there's a million lanes. I guess, and I don't want to be, like I said, I have my own reckoning to do. Just because I love hip-hop and black music and can talk to you about D'Angelo for 7 hours doesn't mean that, I don't have inherently taught and learned biases myself. And the only way that I'm unpacking them and understanding them is by like confronting them. And the only way I'm doing that is by like really walking right into the Mack truck. So that's why I'm asking hard questions. That's why I'm talking to people of color in my network, because I don't have the answers, and it's not up to you to tell us what to do. I just want to hear your stories and your truths, because I'm tired of people looking the other way, myself included.
Well, this is definitely a great path to moving forward, man. Like just having open conversations like these and letting other people in on it and spreading it as far as wide we can, and just being heard, you know? It's like that's all that we ever want, is just to be heard.
Yeah, and that's what I'm honored and privileged to have a platform where people might be able to hear you and others. And it's not patronizing. Like, I was going to have you, we've tried to do this podcast before all this stuff. So it's not like I'm having you on just because of that. But
no, of course.
I am also realizing that, hey, like, I could sit down and break down another live album, or we could talk about some shit that really matters, you know? And
and right now is the time to talk about that shit.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll finish it up because I mentioned D'Angelo, and, you know, it's like, when I was locked up is when Black Messiah came out, and so I didn't get to really listen to it till after the initial release, and then I had, you know, a tough time kind of cracking it for a while. But over time, now I love it, you know. But the other day, like when I say the other day, maybe a month ago, after the George Floyd murder, while shit was really getting...
What was it, like 2011?
2015 is when it came out.
Yes, right, yeah.
But he came back in 2011 on the Mary J. Blige tour, correct. But the album dropped in 2015, and I just didn't get to hear it until, you know, close to a year after it came out. The point being is, like, I have a real emotional relationship, obviously, with D'Angelo, as do you. We talked about that, and I think we'll talk about it in depth that's the next podcast. Yeah, and I hear a lot of that. I hear that in just about anything you do, but especially
his mother and my mother are like brunch buddies too, man. It's kind of funny.
Oh, that's classic, man. Yeah, when we do the in-person, like, full breakdown, we talk about your journey and your misadventure overseas and all that. We'll do like a solid 15-20 minutes about D'Angelo on that podcast. Cool. But I just wanted to say the charade. This time, this month, the song, the charade, because that's really what prompted him to finally put out the album, and, you know, Ferguson and everything. And I just wanted to say that
was a chance to talk.
Yes, it's brought me to tears. Like, I liked the song already a lot, but this month it digs so deep. So yeah, go back to it sometime. And I know you listen to it anyway, but the shit is
I'm actually going to do it as soon as we're done with this.
Word.
Because I really want to dig deep into the lyrics again too.
Yeah, man. And we'll definitely get into some D'Angelo down the road when we have this podcast in person, and we can hear about your whole career and all the hardcore bands from back in the day and everything that got you up through here. But I am really, honestly, just so grateful that you were open to talking about this shit and telling people about your life and
I appreciate you thinking of me and having me on here to have a voice on your show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Well, we'll do it again. In the meantime, put on the charade and, you know, hug your fam, and please keep us posted. All the music, you know what I mean? You know, I'm always, man. You know, your manager Benji is always up. You know, hey, check this out. He keeps me posted on what you're doing, and man, we'll always be supporting. You know, whether it's with Shots Fired, Tiny Universe, whatever you're doing.
Oh yeah.
All right, man. Well, stay safe, stay healthy.
You too, man. You too, man. We'll be in touch.
Sounds good, my brother.
Oh,
I want to say thank you to my man D.J.WILLIAMS for that thoughtful and thought-provoking conversation. Look forward to sitting down with him one-on-one and really chopping it up about some shared, harrowing, parallel life experiences that we both went through, and also just hear the nuance and the details and the rabbit holes about his musical and personal journey. But that was just a fascinating walk down memory lane for him with his youthful excursions and adolescent exuberance and pathway to music, geography, and his Black American story. Thanks, DJ, and much love. Check out Shots Fired on Color Red Music, DJWilliamsmusic.com. And you're hearing After Laughter by Wendy Renee. Of course, those of you paying attention will remember this as the sample for Wu-Tang Clan Tears. So, since this is the 36th chamber of the Upful Life Podcast, before we get into the Vibe Junkie Jam, I just wanted to hit you with a little Wendy Renee After Laughter. But then we're also going to switch him up, and you're going to get a little Wu-Tang After Laughter Tears. So let me switch it over here by toggling, and we're going to get into this Wu-Tang Clan Tears. There it is. Now, yeah, this is a seminal album, and it's a real important piece of hip-hop history. So I'd be remiss if I didn't play a little nugget or two from the seminal debut of the Wu-Tang Clan, 1993. And just let it ride for a sec here, and then we'll get into the Vibe Junkie Jam introduction.
Get the one cup, it's a hot day in the summer. Didn't expect to come across a crazy gunner. Hey, shorty, checking from the bag of the dough. But he would wait, looked him in the eyes, said no. Money splattered him, bowed, and he snatched the bag, hit his pockets, then he jetted up the ass. Girl screaming, the noise up and down the block.
So with that, we're going to get into the Vibe Junkie Jam of the week, which is a bit of a departure from what we're hearing right now. We've been talking a lot about Burning Man, Black Rock City, and the Playa. And we talked to Erin Douglas, a Black Burner Project, about the Black experience on the Playa. And like her, I had a definitive, life-affirming, and transformative experience and journey when I first ventured to Black Rock City in 2013. And there's one song that is kind of like my Burning Man theme song. I heard it several times that first burn, different DJs, that just perfect moments in time when the stars or sun or moon aligned with a certain state of mind. And it's hard to really think about Burning Man and not hear Dusted Compass by the Human Experience, the Future Primitive remix. It is a definitive soundtrack to Burning for this guy, and is an emotional quilt, if you will, that connects me with so many of my dearest friends who have each experienced Burning Man in their own colorful and beautiful and existential, idiosyncratic way. And I'm talking about the homies from back east and my people from the Spirit of Swanee, and even my Virgin Burn Camp, Be Here Now. So, in a nutshell, since we're celebrating the burn that would have been, and I hope a lot of you have checked out or checking out the virtual Burning Man and Infinite Playa and all that cool shit that the org is doing. But to wrap it up, for the Vibe Junkie Jam on this 36th chamber of the Upful Life Podcast, We're going to go with Dusted Compass. The Human Experience, David Block, another dear friend we hope to have on the show one day, soon-ish. And it'll be the Future Primitive remix. And with that, we're going to send you off. Sayonara. Wubba wubba wubba. Goodbye. God bless. And we'll see you next time on the Upful Life Podcast. I'm your host, B. Getz. Yes, indeedy.
it's too